Keanu Reeves arrived quietly at the evening event, not with loud cheers or flashing lights, but with the calm presence he was known for. He wore a simple black suit, his hair slightly falling over his eyes, and a small, gentle smile rested on his face. He didn't walk in with a big team or security guards. Instead, he walked alone, nodding kindly to those who noticed him. Some people whispered when they saw him, surprised but happy to spot such a famous man among them. The event was a charity dinner, held in a beautiful hall filled with soft golden lights and gentle music playing in the background. People were dressed nicely. The tables were set with candles, and servers moved around carrying trays of food and drinks. It was a place where people came to help others, to share good stories, and to make a difference. Keanu liked that. He always preferred quiet moments with meaning over big crowds and noise. As he moved through the room, he stopped to talk to a few guests. He was polite and warm. He asked people about their day, about their lives. He wasn't there to show off or be the center of attention. He was simply there, being himself. That was what made people respect him even more. He never acted like he was better than anyone else. He found his seat at a corner table, near a large window that looked out at the city lights. The night outside was peaceful, the sky clear and dark inside. Laughter and kind voices filled the air. Keanu sat quietly, sipping a glass of water, watching people move, talk and smile. He seemed calm, but his eyes showed a deep world inside, as if he was thinking about something far away, something important. Across the room, a few people watched him with curiosity. They wondered why he had come, what he might say if he gave a speech, or what he was thinking about. But Keanu didn't come to make a speech. He came because someone had invited him personally, and he believed it was something worth his time. What many people didn't know was that Keanu had been going through a time of quiet reflection. Life had given him both great success and deep loss. He had seen the beauty of the world and also its sadness. That night, he wasn't just a movie star at a charity event. He was a man carrying memories, thoughts, and questions in his heart. At the other side of the hall, someone else was waiting too. A young boy, around 10 or 11 years old, was sitting with his father. The boy had something in his hands, something wrapped in a plain envelope. He kept looking at it, then looking around the room, as if waiting for the right moment. His father leaned down and whispered something to him. The boy nodded, holding the envelope tightly. The boy's name was Damien, and his father was someone the world knew well, Elon Musk. Damien wasn't there to meet just anyone. He had written a note, a short letter, to someone he admired deeply. Not for fame, but for his heart, for the way he spoke in interviews, the way he acted in public, the stories he chose to tell. For Damien, Keanu wasn't just an actor. He was someone who seemed to understand pain. Someone who had walked through hard times and still stood strong and kind. The boy's hands shook slightly. He had written the note alone, not even showing his father at first. He didn't want it to be a show or something made for cameras. He wanted it to be real, from one heart to another. Now as he looked across the room and saw Keanu sitting by the window, the moment was almost here. Keanu looked up and noticed the boy watching him. Their eyes met for a second, and something gentle passed between them. Damien smiled nervously, and Keanu returned it with a small nod. It was as if they both knew something important was about to happen, though no one else in the room had any idea. The room continued to buzz with conversation and laughter. But for Keanu and the boy, time seemed to slow down. They were two people from very different lives, yet somehow connected in that quiet moment. The soft music continued to play, the candles flickered, and the stars outside blinked softly in the night sky. It was a calm beginning to something that would soon become unforgettable, a meeting that would not only touch the heart of one of the world's most private and beloved actors, but would also remind everyone that sometimes the most powerful moments begin with silence, a quiet look, and a small envelope held in a child's hands, waiting to be shared, waiting to change everything. Damien sat beside his father, Elon Musk, quietly holding the envelope in his hands. His small fingers gripped the paper tightly, as if it might fly away if he let go. He wasn't nervous because of the crowd or the cameras. He wasn't even nervous because of who his father was. He was nervous because of the man sitting across the room, the man he had written the note for, the man who had unknowingly helped him during the hardest moments of his life. The boy had watched many of Keanu Reeves' interviews, not for entertainment, but for comfort. Damien had lost someone close to him, someone who meant the world to him. And in those quiet nights when he couldn't sleep, he had listened to Keanu talk about life, pain, and kindness. Keanu's soft voice and honest words helped him feel less alone, more understood. That's why the note was important. It was his way of saying thank you, from one broken heart to another. Elon Musk noticed his son's silence and leaned down to whisper, "Are you ready?" Damien looked up and gave a small nod. He took a deep breath, then turned to look at Keanu again. The actor was still sitting by the window, calm and quiet, sipping water, lost in his thoughts. It felt like the right moment, not too loud, not too busy, just quiet enough for something true to happen. Slowly, Damien stood up from his chair, holding the envelope close to his chest. Elon didn't stop him. He simply placed a hand on his shoulder for support. The boy took one step, then another, moving through the crowd with small, careful movements. A few people noticed and moved aside, curious but respectful. No one said a word, but many eyes followed him. Keanu saw the boy walking toward him, and his expression changed just slightly. His eyes softened, and a small smile formed on his lips. He didn't know the boy, but he could see something serious in the way he walked, something important. He placed his glass down on the table and turned his full attention toward the child. When Damien finally reached him, he stood still for a moment, looking up into Keanu's kind, quiet eyes. The boy didn't speak right away. He simply held out the envelope with both hands, offering it like a gift. Keanu looked at the envelope, then at Damien, and gently took it from his hands. His fingers brushed lightly against the boy's, and in that brief touch, something warm passed between them. The room, still filled with soft music and conversation, seemed to pause for just a second. Not completely silent, but somehow quieter, as if the universe wanted to pay attention to that small exchange. Keanu held the envelope carefully, as if it was something fragile and valuable. He didn't open it yet. Instead, he looked at Damien and said in a soft voice, "Thank you." Damien smiled, not with excitement, but with relief. It was the smile of someone who had finally said something they had been holding in for a long time. "I wrote it for you," he whispered. "It helped me." Keanu nodded, deeply touched. He didn't ask any questions, didn't rush to open the envelope. He simply placed his hand gently on Damien's shoulder, a silent way of saying, "I understand." It wasn't about fame or a fan meeting a celebrity. It was about two souls recognizing something in each other, something unspoken but real. Elon Musk watched from a distance, not stepping in. He respected the moment. Even though he was one of the most known people in the world, in that moment, he was just a father watching his son do something brave. Elon had read parts of the note before, and he knew what it meant to Damien, but he also knew it would mean something to Keanu too. Damien stood there for another moment, then gave a small wave and began walking back to his seat. Keanu watched him go, holding the envelope close. The boy didn't look back, but his steps were lighter now, as if a weight had been lifted from his heart. Keanu looked down at the envelope, still not opening it. He wasn't ready yet. He wanted to give it the time and space it deserved. He could feel the emotion in the boy's eyes, and he knew that whatever was inside, it wasn't just words. It was something more, something deeply human. The people who had seen the moment didn't say much. They just shared quiet glances, wondering what had just happened. Some of them smiled, others looked thoughtful. Everyone could feel that something meaningful had passed between the boy and the man. As Damien sat back down next to his father, Elon gave him a quiet nod. He didn't need to say anything. Damien knew he was proud. He had done something kind, something brave, and he had done it with a full heart. Keanu placed the envelope gently on the table in front of him. He stared out the window again, the city lights glowing softly in the distance. But now his mind was somewhere else, somewhere deeper. That simple white envelope had changed something in the air, and he knew this night would not be forgotten. Keanu sat at the table with the white envelope resting quietly in front of him. His fingers gently touched the edge of it, but he didn't rush to open it. He looked at it as if it held something powerful, something that needed to be opened at the right moment. His eyes were calm, but deep inside, his heart was beginning to feel something stir. He had received many letters in his life, from fans and strangers, but this felt different. This was not about movies or fame. It felt personal, honest, and full of emotion. The room around him stayed warm and full of quiet chatter. Glasses clinked. Softly, laughter floated through the air, but in Keanu's world, all of that seemed far away now. It was just him, the envelope, and the feeling in his chest that something important was about to happen. He picked it up slowly, holding it with both hands like it was something delicate. His fingers moved gently as he opened the flap, careful not to tear it. Inside was a single folded piece of paper. Not fancy, not typed, just plain paper with words written by hand. Keanu could see the small handwriting, neat but filled with emotion. He unfolded it slowly, his eyes scanning the first line. Then the second. As he read, his expression began to change, not all at once, but gently, like a cloud moving across the sky. The first words were simple. Dear Mr. Keanu Reeves, I hope this letter finds you well, but soon. The words started to touch something deep inside him. The letter was from Damien, and he had written about how much Keanu had helped him without ever meeting him. He wrote about his mother, who had passed away the year before, and how the nights had become too quiet, too heavy, and too long. Damien explained that he used to cry in the dark, not knowing how to make the pain go away. He didn't want to talk to anyone, not even his father. He felt lost, even though he was surrounded by people. Then one day, by accident, he had watched a short video of Keanu talking about grief, about losing someone you love. Keanu's words were simple, but they felt true. He said something like, "The people who love us, they miss us too." Damien had watched it over and over again, not because it gave him answers, but because it made him feel less alone. As Keanu continued reading, his hands began to shake just a little. His eyes blinked more often, and he leaned forward slightly, like the letter had pulled him in. The words on the paper weren't long, but they carried a weight. They spoke of pain, but also of healing. They were filled with the voice of a child who had lost so much and still found the courage to say thank you. Damien wrote, "You helped me without knowing, and I just wanted you to know that, because sometimes we don't get to say thank you to the people who save us." That sentence stopped Keanu for a moment. He looked up, eyes glossy, breathing. Slowly, he held the paper to his chest for a second, closing his eyes, letting the words settle deep inside him. He had felt pain too. He had lost people he loved with all his heart. And though many years had passed, the pain never fully left. Reading Damien's words brought all of that back, not in a bad way, but in a quiet, soft way, like a memory knocking gently at the door. Keanu remembered the nights he spent alone, wondering why life had to be so hard, wondering how to keep moving forward when your heart feels broken. Now a young boy was telling him that his words had helped, that his honesty had made someone else feel brave enough to keep going. Keanu had never thought much about what his interviews might mean to others. He just spoke from the heart, trying to be real in a world that often wasn't. But now he knew his words had mattered. People nearby started to notice something was happening. Keanu was no longer just the quiet actor sitting alone. There was something different about him now, a glow in his eyes, a stillness in his body. A few guests looked toward him, unsure of what they were seeing, but they could feel it, like the air had changed, softer, heavier, more real. He read the last line of the letter. I hope one day I can help someone too, just like you helped me. That was it. The letter ended there, no signature, no extra words. Just a boy's heart written out on paper and handed to a man who needed it more than he realized. Keanu folded the letter again, very slowly, with great care. He placed it back in the envelope, but he didn't put it away. He kept it on the table, close to his hand, like it was something sacred. A treasure found in an unexpected place. His eyes stayed on the envelope, but his mind was full of thoughts. Memories, emotions, and gratitude. He didn't cry, not yet, but something inside him had already broken open. Not in sadness, but in quiet joy. In the middle of a normal night, in a room full of people, a child had given him a gift more valuable than anything money could buy. A message from the heart that reminded him of the beauty of being real, being kind, and being human. Keanu sat still, his hand resting on the white envelope. He had just finished reading Damien's note, but he didn't move, he didn't speak. He simply sat there, quiet and full of emotion. His eyes were fixed on the folded letter, but his thoughts had gone. Far, far away, the room around him kept moving. People talking, glasses clinking, soft music playing, but Keanu didn't hear any of it. The world had become quiet in his mind. His heart felt heavy, not in a painful way, but in a deep, emotional way. The words of the little boy kept echoing inside him. You helped me without knowing. That line kept coming back again and again. Keanu had never met Damien before. Tonight, but the boy had written to him with such honesty, with such warmth. It was like reading a piece of someone's soul. And it had touched him more than he could explain. He looked up and saw Damien sitting next to his father, Elon Musk. The boy was looking down at his hands, maybe a little nervous, maybe hoping he had done the right thing. Keanu gave him a small smile, just enough to say, "Yes, I got it." And Damien looked up and smiled back. It was a quiet exchange, but it meant everything. Keanu looked back at the envelope and finally picked it up again. He opened it one more time, as if reading. The words again would help him understand why they had made him feel so much. And this time, as he read, something changed in him. His eyes started to shine, his lips trembled, and a soft tear rolled down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. He just let it fall, because in that moment, he was not a celebrity, not a movie star. He was just a man feeling something real and beautiful. The words on the paper were simple, but full of meaning. They spoke of pain, of loneliness, of love that had been lost, and of hope that had been found again. Keanu had felt all those things in his own life. He had lost people too, his best friend, his partner, his child life had taken so much from him. And yet, he had kept going, not because it was easy, but because he knew life still had meaning. And now, a young boy had reminded him of that in the most unexpected way. More tears came, slowly, gently. Keanu didn't try to hide them. He let them come because they were real. The room around him started to notice. People stopped talking, some turned to look. Others followed their eyes, wondering what was happening. They saw Keanu sitting there, alone at his table, crying softly, holding a piece of paper like it was the most precious thing in the world. No one laughed, no one made a sound. Instead, the room fell into a gentle silence, not cold, not awkward, but respectful. It was as if everyone understood that something very human was happening, a moment that didn't need words, didn't need explanation. Keanu's tears were not a sign of weakness, but of love, of connection, of understanding. He took a deep breath and looked out the window again. The city lights still shone, the stars still blinked above, but now everything looked different. More alive, more real. The note had changed something inside him. He felt seen, not as an actor, but as a person, and he realized that just by being honest, just by sharing his own pain in interviews or in quiet moments, he had helped someone else, someone small, someone hurting, someone brave enough to say thank you. Keanu finally folded the letter again. Very slowly, very gently, he placed it back inside the envelope and held it close to his heart. His eyes closed for a moment, and he whispered something no one could hear. Maybe it was a prayer. Maybe it was a thank you. Maybe it was just a word he needed to let go of. Across the room, Elon put a hand on Damien's shoulder and leaned in, whispering something in his ear. Damien looked at Keanu and saw the tears. And instead of being scared or confused, he smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a small, peaceful one, because he understood something important. His words had reached the right place. The people in the room slowly went back to their conversations. But something had changed. The mood was softer. The air felt warmer. A quiet magic had passed through them all, and Keanu, still sitting at his table, felt more alive than he had in a long time. The note had done something special. It had connected two souls, one who had been broken by loss, and one who had helped without knowing. In a world full of noise, full of fame and attention, this moment had been quiet, honest, and unforgettable. It was the kind of moment that didn't happen every day, the kind that stays in your heart forever. Keanu looked at the envelope one last time, then slipped it into the inside pocket of his coat, close to his heart. He knew he would keep it forever, not because it came from someone famous, but because it came from someone real, someone who felt, someone who cared. And in that moment, Keanu understood something simple, yet powerful sometimes. The smallest voices carry the deepest truth. Keanu sat quietly, his heart still heavy but full. After reading the note, he felt like a part of him had been touched that hadn't been touched in a long time. He had cried, yes, but not because he was sad. He had cried because something inside him had finally been seen, understood, and appreciated. That feeling stayed with him, even as people in the room slowly went back to their meals and conversations. But not everyone forgot the moment. A few guests at nearby tables had seen Keanu's tears and the way he held the envelope. They didn't know what was in the letter, but they could feel it had been something deep, something powerful. Whispers moved softly through the room, not loud or rude, but full of curiosity and care. People wondered what the boy had written, what had made a man like Keanu Reeves, known for his calm and strength, break down in front of everyone. Some felt emotional just watching him. They didn't need to know the details. The image of Keanu sitting alone, holding a small envelope like it was made of glass, was enough. It reminded them of something in their own lives: loss, love, a moment when someone's words reached their heart. In that way, the emotion began to spread, quietly, person to person, like a candle lighting another candle, until the whole room felt a little warmer. Elon Musk noticed it too. He had seen many things in his life: business, invention, fame. But this was something else, something you couldn't build with money or machines. He looked at his son, proud and quiet, and gave him a small nod. Elon didn't always show emotion easily, but tonight was different. Tonight he had seen something that touched even him, a moment where humanity was bigger than success or power. Keanu finally stood up from his table, not to leave, but to take a slow walk around the hall. He needed to move, to breathe, to let his heart settle. As he walked, people moved out of the way respectfully. They didn't stop him, didn't ask for pictures. They just watched, feeling like something holy had passed through their evening. Keanu's eyes were still a little red, his face soft and thoughtful, but he looked peaceful, like a man who had just remembered something important. He passed by a group of older guests who smiled at him kindly. One of them, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes, said gently, "Whoever wrote that letter must be very special." Keanu paused, gave a soft smile, and nodded. "Yes," he said quietly, "he is." Then he kept walking, not needing to say more. As he moved through the room, a few people started to feel emotional too. One woman wiped a tear from her cheek. A man placed a hand over his heart. It wasn't about Keanu the actor anymore. It was about Keanu the human being, and how a small boy's words had reached into his soul and opened something beautiful. At the far end of the hall, there was a small space with a piano. It wasn't being played, but the instrument stood there, silent and shiny. Keanu walked toward it slowly, like he was being pulled by something inside him. He sat down on the bench, placed his hands gently on the keys, and closed his eyes. No one asked him to play. No one expected it. But he did anyway. His fingers moved slowly at first, playing soft notes, a melody full of feeling. People around the room stopped talking, one by one. They turned their heads and listened. Some stood still, holding their breath. Others sat down, eyes wide and hearts open. The music wasn't loud, it wasn't fast, but it was full of emotion. Each note told a story of pain, of healing, of connection. And as Keanu played, he thought of Damien's words. He thought of the boy sitting across the room, watching him with wide eyes. He thought of the letter, the quiet strength it carried, the way it had reminded him that his life had meaning beyond movies or fame. He wasn't just an actor. He was a person who had survived loss, and now, somehow, he had helped someone else do the same. Damien watched from his seat, his hands folded in his lap. He didn't smile big or jump with excitement. He just sat still, his eyes fixed on Keanu, listening to every note. Every sound felt like a thank you, not in words, but in music and in his heart. Damien felt proud not because a famous person had read his letter, but because something real had come from it. When the song ended, the room stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then a gentle wave of applause began, soft at first, then stronger. But it wasn't wild or loud, it was full of respect. People clapped not for a performance, but for the feeling behind it. Keanu stood up, gave a small bow, and returned to his table. This time he didn't sit alone. Damien walked over, holding a glass of juice in one hand. He stood next to Keanu's table and asked softly, "Can I sit with you?" Keanu smiled. "Of course," he said, and Damien took the seat beside him. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. They just sat side by side, two people connected by something bigger than words. And in that moment, it was clear something beautiful had happened, something true. A boy had shared his heart, and a man had listened. And the world, for just one night, had felt a little more human, a little more kind, and a lot more connected. The night had changed for everyone, not just for Keanu and Damien, but for every person in that hall. Something invisible had passed through the room, something warm and honest. It wasn't a speech, it wasn't a performance. It was just a boy with a letter and a man who listened, yet it had touched everyone's heart like a soft wave of emotion. Even people who didn't know the full story could feel it in their bones. This was something real. People began to talk. In hushed tones, not gossip, but quiet conversations filled with feeling. Some said things like, "Did you see his face when he read the letter?" Or, "I've never seen anything like that." Others just sat quietly, thinking about their own lives, their own loved ones, and the times they had wished someone would truly understand their pain. One woman at a nearby table leaned toward her husband and whispered, "I lost my brother last year, and tonight reminded me of him." Her husband gently held her hand, tears in his eyes too. A young man who had been scrolling on his phone earlier now sat silently, staring at the table, thinking about the grandmother who raised him. He had never told anyone how much he missed her, but now he felt like maybe he should. A waiter who had been working all evening stood near the back of the room. He wasn't famous, just a quiet man doing his job. But even he felt something. He looked at Keanu and Damien sitting side by side and smiled. It reminded him of his own son, who was just a few years younger than Damien. That small moment made him want to go home and hug his boy a little tighter. Elon Musk, usually known for being serious and focused on work, sat quietly watching the scene. He was proud of his son, but also surprised, not because Damien had written something thoughtful, but because the note had created something this powerful. Elon had been in many important rooms, full of world leaders and brilliant minds. But tonight felt more important than all of them. It was not about rockets or robots, but about the human heart. Keanu, still sitting with Damien, felt like a weight had been lifted off his chest for years. He had carried pain inside him, losses that never fully healed. Memories that stayed in the shadows, but Damian's letter had brought something into the light. It had reminded him that sharing pain doesn't make you weaker. It brings you closer to others. It makes you human. They didn't talk much at the table, but their silence was not empty. It was full of meaning. Damian slowly sipped his juice while Keanu sat with a peaceful look on his face. Every now and then, they glanced at each other and smiled. That was enough. There was no need to say everything out loud. Other guests began to come over, one by one, not to ask for pictures or autographs, but just to offer kind words. An older man came up and said to Keanu, "I saw the way you looked at that letter, and I just want to say thank you. It reminded me of my son." Keanu stood up and shook his hand, saying, "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." A young woman approached Damian and said, "That was really brave of you." Damian blushed a little and smiled. "I just wanted to say thank you to someone who helped me," he said softly. She nodded. "You helped more people than you know." The room that had once been filled with formal smiles and polite conversation now felt like a family gathering. People were opening up, sharing stories, crying softly, hugging each other. It was like a wall had come down, and behind it, everyone realized they had something in common. Everyone had been through something. Everyone had felt pain, and everyone needed connection. Even the organizers of the event noticed the change. One of them walked over to Keanu and said, "We planned this night for charity, but I think your moment with that boy raised more hearts than any check ever could." Keanu smiled and replied, "Sometimes all it takes is a kind word. A little honesty." As the night went on, the event began to wind down. The music became softer, and people slowly started to say their goodbyes, but no one left feeling the same. They felt warmer, more alive, more connected. It was as if the letter had not just reached Keanu, it had reached everyone. Keanu stood up, stretched a little, and looked down at Damian. "Ready to go?" he asked gently. Damian nodded and stood up too. Keanu placed his hand on the boy's shoulder, and together they walked toward the exit. People watched them go with respect, no one trying to stop them, only offering nods, smiles, and soft goodbyes before they reached the door. Keanu turned back one last time. He looked at the room full of people, some smiling, some crying, all changed, and gave a small bow. A silent thank you to everyone who had shared this moment with him. As they stepped outside into the cool night air, a breeze moved softly through the trees. The stars above looked a little brighter, or maybe it just felt that way. Keanu looked up at the sky and took a deep breath. For the first time in a long while, his heart felt open and his soul felt full. All because a boy had written a note, and he had taken the time to read it with his whole heart. Outside the building, the night was peaceful. The soft wind moved through the trees, and the stars shined gently above. Keanu and Damian walked side by side, slowly, not in a rush. They had left the noise and lights of the event behind, but the feeling of the moment still stayed with them. It was quiet now, only the sound of their footsteps and the soft rustling of leaves in the dark. Keanu looked down at Damian, who was walking with his hands in his pockets. The boy seemed calm but thoughtful, as if he was still thinking about everything that had happened. Keanu could see that this night had meant something big for the boy, and for himself too. He reached into his coat and gently touched the envelope. Again, still resting close to his heart. He didn't need to read it again. The words were already part of him now. They walked until they reached a bench near a small garden. It was quiet and peaceful, away from the crowd. Keanu looked at Damian and said softly, "Want to sit for a moment?" Damian nodded, and they both sat down. The sky above them was wide and full of stars, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked up, breathing in the night air. After a while, Keanu broke the silence. His voice was calm. "You know, Damian, your letter reminded me of something I had forgotten." "What's that?" Damian asked, turning his head to look at him. "That words can heal." Keanu replied, "Even when they come from someone small, or someone we've never met, when they're honest, they reach the heart." Damian smiled, a little shy but proud. "I just wanted to tell you thank you," he said. "When my mom passed away, I didn't want to talk to anyone, but then I saw a video of you talking about loss, and it felt like you were talking just to me." Keanu nodded slowly. "I've lost people too. People I loved very much," he said. "It never really goes away, but sometimes someone says something that helps. And I'm glad I could be that person for you, even if I didn't know it." They sat in silence again for a few minutes, but it wasn't an empty silence. It was full of shared understanding. Two people from very different lives, joined by the same feeling, grief, and the slow, painful road to healing. "Do you ever feel angry about it?" Damien asked suddenly. "About the people you lost?" Keanu looked at the boy for a long moment, then nodded. "Yes," he said. "Sometimes I do. Sometimes I ask why. Sometimes I feel it's unfair. But then I remember that the love I felt was real, and the pain is part of that love, and if I didn't care, I wouldn't feel the pain. So in a strange way, the pain reminds me that they mattered, that they were part of me." Damien looked down, thinking hard about those words. He didn't answer, but Keanu could see that he understood, really understood. That was the amazing thing about Damien. He wasn't just a kid. He was someone who had seen a hard part of life and had learned from it, grown from it. "I want to help people too," Damien said quietly. "Like you helped me. I want to make people feel less alone." "You already have," Keanu replied, smiling. "Your letter helped me tonight more than you can imagine. You reminded me that what we say and how we live can touch others, even when we don't realize it." They sat for a little longer, watching the stars move slowly across the sky. The world felt quiet and big, but not lonely. It felt like anything was possible, even healing, even hope. A car pulled up nearby, waiting to take Damien and his father home. Elon Musk stepped out and walked toward them. He didn't rush, didn't interrupt. He just stood quietly until Damien noticed him. "That's my dad," Damien said, standing up. "I should go now." Keanu stood too, and they looked at each other. "Thank you again," Keanu said, "for your words and your heart." Damien gave him a small hug. "Not too long, just enough." "Goodbye, Mr. Reeves," he said. "Goodbye, Damien," Keanu replied. "Keep writing, keep feeling. You're going to do great things." Damien ran back to his father, and Elon placed a hand on his shoulder. They both waved at Keanu, who waved back. The car doors closed, and they drove off into the night. Keanu stayed on the bench a little longer, watching the empty road. He felt something deep inside him, something hard to describe. It wasn't just the note, or the tears, or the music. It was the connection. The reminder that even in a world so full of noise and distractions, moments like this could still happen. Moments that remind you what it means to be human. He stood up, looked at the stars one last time, and walked slowly down the path. His heart was full, not with sadness but with something new, something warm. It was the feeling of being seen, of being understood, and most of all, of knowing that even the smallest voices can leave the biggest marks on our hearts.